A week and a half ago, Fame put out a video about understanding plinks. If you're seeing this video, you probably already know who he is, the Spiderman CEO. He brings us a bunch of tech, makes it very accessible, but he's sort of been drip feeding some information about the overhead slam that I thought I would compile into one place and sort of put my way of thinking about it in, because I think that there are some helpful things that I have to add here. So this is going to be a comprehensive video on how the overhead slam works. When you've got a slam, when you lose a slam, and it's more complex than you might expect, but it's also pretty simple once you get the hang of it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to suggest that there's a hidden variable in the game, which I'm going to call slam counter. The idea being that if Spider-Man uses an ability which grants him significant height in the air, he gets an overhead slam. There are circumstances where you can have two overhead slams lined up, so it's not just a matter of having a slam or not having a slam. So, I'm going to suggest that there's one slam counter variable which stores how many slams you have ready. Usually this is 0 or 1, but sometimes, and we'll get into this in a moment, you can have 2. There are 3 distinct ways that you can get an overhead slam. So you can gain a slam by double jumping, web swinging, or wall crawling. And the common thread from each of these, from a game design point of view, is that these are the 3 ways that Spider-Man gains height, since the overhead slam is aesthetically supposed to be an attack from above. Now you lose the slam by either using it or by touching the ground. And at the most basic level, that's it. That's how the slam works. But there's a bit of nuance to these interactions that we're going to have to fill in. Mainly, exactly how do these interact with the slam counter? If you understand that, you understand everything about how the slam works. When you use the overhead slam, the slam counter is decreased by 1. So if you had 2 overheads lined up, now you've got 1. If you had 1 lined up, now you've got none. Straightforward enough. The other way of losing the slam is just touching the ground, which will set the counter straight to 0. So if you had 2 slams, they're both gone. And at first it looked like it was any touch to the ground, like even a bunny hop, that very brief, basically 1 frame moment that you're on the ground, would take away your overhead slam. But there are some weird exceptions to this, which Fame brought up in his latest video. If you use a web zip and you jump right after that rolling animation finishes, you get to keep your overhead slam that you got from the web zip, which is a type of web swing which sets your overhead slam counter to 1. But that roll doesn't set it back to 0. It seems as though while you're doing these animations such as rolling, the game stops checking if you're touching the ground, and there's a brief window at the end of that animation where you get back control to jump, but it's still not checking if you've left the ground. As far as I can tell, the timing for you getting back control on a regular web swing as opposed to a web zip when you roll on the ground is a little bit different. You get control back a little bit later, and I haven't been able to preserve my overhead slam out of one of these rolls yet. The other exception is getting off the wall, which Fame mentioned in the same video, and it may or may not be some common cause between these two. It might be a similar animation thing, or it could be that the game still thinks that you're on the wall until you've spent a moment on the ground. It's hard to say until someone figures out how to get into the game and track different variables and what they do. I would be super interested, but all that matters is that there are little exceptions like this. Whether you find a use for them in game, I'm not sure if this is going to be combo making or breaking, but it's good to know. Now, for getting slams in the first place, if you jump while in the air, then you will increase the slam counter by 1, and that means if you already have a slam ready from one of the other 2 methods, you can double jump to line up 2 back-to-back slams. Is this useful? Probably not. You would probably just rather hold on to that second jump, and instead of stacking up 2 slams in a row, you would rather slam, jump, slam, because you've got more control. You hang in a more similar position in the air, but hey, it's an interaction that actually happens, so I had to mention it. One thing to bear in mind is that the overhead slam animation, it makes Spider-Man hold up his legs above the ground without raising his ground collision hitbox. So if you jump straight out of a low overhead slam, like you might do if you're doing a plink, you may think you've done a double jump without getting a slam, but really you touched the ground and did a single jump. Your model just didn't show up very clearly. Alright, so the second way to get an overhead slam is by web swinging. Now this doesn't increase the slam counter, instead it sets it to exactly 1. This is more like an on-off thing in isolation. And this means that if you double jump, then web swing, the slam counter's 1, you've got 1 overhead. But if you swing, then double jump, since the double jump increases the slam counter, your slam counter is 2, and you can use back-to-back overhead slams. As I said, I don't think this is useful, but it's good to know that that's how it works. And I really do wish that this wasn't the way that it works, because it's just weird. Like, the double jump is the only thing that increases the slam counter instead of setting it to on, and if that wasn't how that one worked, then we could just have a single on-off has slam variable, which is turn on and off by your different abilities, instead of this weird case where sometimes you have 2 slams ready to go, and maybe that means that there's some hidden second variable that only the double jump is accessing and the other 2 abilities can't. But as far as I see, we don't have any conclusive evidence to go either way. It could work either way. So I think this method of a single variable that can be 0, 1, or 2 is the most clear way of thinking about it. Alright, that's a bit of a tangent. Tangent over. We're not talking about the double jump anymore. We're talking about the web swing. And the web swing turns out to be the most interesting way of getting the overhead slam because of when you get it. It's not when you start swinging or when your web reaches the wall. It's at the very moment that you fire the web, but only if it's going to connect to something. If you fire at the sky, you're not going to get a slam. But at that moment that the game decides it's going to hit something, then your slam counter is set to 1. So you can cancel the web swing at any time. You can let go with hold to swing enabled. You can cancel it with a web cluster. You can cancel it however you like. You'll keep the overhead slam. And this is the key principle behind the plinks. And the fact that it doesn't matter how you cancel the web swing seemed to be the key takeaway that Fame wanted people to get from that Understanding Plinks video. Now finally, I've never seen anyone else talking about this. You get an overhead slam by wall crawling. If you're holding space to stick onto a wall and then you just let go to fall off, it does not matter how you got there. You didn't have to swing on, you didn't have to double jump on, you've got an overhead slam. So I don't know if people just don't know that this is a thing or that people have collectively decided that it's useless, but either way, if you figure out a good way of using this in a combo or whatever, please send it to me. I would love to see how it's done. So that's basically it. The point of this video is so that if you don't fully understand how this slam is working, you can have this mental model. You've got a slam counter. At any point during your combo, you can increase that slam counter to get a slam, and then you have it. Until you hit the ground, until you use the slam, you just get to hold onto it. And so if that helps people to develop new combos, please share them with me. I would like to learn those combos and use them. And if you've got any questions or I've said something that doesn't line up with something that you've seen in game, please let me know. Spider-Man's this really deep character. I want to make sure that the community understands him properly. I want to fix anything that I've got wrong. But for now, this is the best model I've come up with. If there are any developments, I'll update this video. If I have any key insights into other mechanics, I'll make some more videos. But that's all for now. Cheers.